put your hands on your head. I just want to check you.
I don't got nothing.
Turn around for me.
I don't got nothing. You can't do this.
Come here, man.
You can't do this.
The thrill of the chase, the cunning of the criminal mind, the frustration of law enforcement. Stories of daring escapes from police custody have captivated the public imagination for decades. From the legendary escapes of a subway burglar to the brazen jailbreaks of El Chapo. These stories shed light on the vulnerabilities of our justice system and the sheer audacity of those willing to defy it. Join us as we take you on a journey through times police officers get outsmarted by fugitives. Mumbai police chase. The police in Navi Mumbai, India recently conducted a major drug bust, where they arrested a 44-year-old Nigerian named Julius Anthony Onyekachukwu in the Ulwi neighborhood. During the raid, police seized over 700 grams of mephedrone worth 76 lakh rupees, as well as 95 grams of cocaine worth 14.25 lakh rupees. They also discovered that 14 foreign nationals, 7 women and 7 men from Nigeria and Uganda, had been living in the area illegally. They were issued notices to leave the country. One of the accused, presumably Onyekachukwu, tried to dramatically escape from the police as they were transporting him in a van. A video circulating on social media shows the man breaking free from the officer's grip and sprinting away. The officers gave chase, but were unable to immediately apprehend him. Over 350 police personnel were involved in the large-scale operation, which was carried out under the guidance of deputy commissioners of police from 2 different zones. The escape of the Nigerian man serves as a wake-up call to the police officials as to why they need to be alert during arrest operations. D.B. Cooper. On November 24, 1971, a man identified as D.B. Cooper executed one of the most audacious and enigmatic crimes in American history. It all began when Cooper, who was later described as a middle-aged man in a business suit, boarded a Northwest Orient Airlines flight from Portland to Seattle. But then he subtly handed a note to a flight attendant, indicating that he had a bomb and wouldn't hesitate to kill. He demanded $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes. Upon landing in Seattle, his demands were met, and he allowed the passengers to disembark before directing the plane to Mexico City with specific flight instructions. Somewhere between Seattle and Reno, in the pitch-black night and amid stormy weather, Cooper opened the aircraft's rear stairs and jumped out with the ransom money strapped to his body. Despite an extensive manhunt involving FBI agents, helicopters, and military aircraft, Cooper vanished into the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest. Parkour runs. In a dramatic incident that captivated New York City, a parkour enthusiast skillfully escaped Wikipedia New York City Police Department officers, showcasing the agility and flexibility associated with the urban sport. The pursuit started when police attempted to apprehend the individual for suspected minor offenses. Utilizing parkour techniques, the suspect adeptly navigated the urban landscape, leaping over obstacles, scaling walls, and using the city's architecture to his advantage. This chase, which spanned several blocks, highlighted the athleticism and spatial awareness required for parkour, as well as the challenges law enforcement faces when dealing with such nimble suspects. Despite their best efforts, the officers were outmaneuvered at every turn, ultimately losing sight of the elusive runner. The incident quickly went viral on social media, with onlookers capturing and sharing footage on social media, sparking discussions about parkour's potential for both sport and evasion. While the suspect's identity remains unknown, the event underscored the need for police to adapt their training and tactics to address the unique challenges posed by parkour practitioners in urban settings. Subway Bandit. In 2012, a man known as the Subway Bandit instigated a series of daring robberies on New York City's subway system, and he skillfully escaped the New York City Police Department at every turn, every time. Given the subway was always so crowded, how did he manage to escape with no one able to track him? Well, he targets subway riders, often striking during off-peak hours when the platforms and trains are less crowded. The Subway Bandit exhibited remarkable agility and in-depth knowledge of the labyrinthine subway network, allowing him to execute quick getaways by blending into the throngs of commuters or disappearing into the intricate web of tunnels and stations. The New York City Police Department launched an extensive manhunt, deploying undercover officers and increasing surveillance throughout the subway system. But despite these efforts, the subway bandit continued his spree, taunting law enforcement with his elusive maneuvers and knack for vanishing without a trace. His ability to evade capture highlighted vulnerabilities in the city's public transit security, exposing the challenges of policing such a vast and complex system. These exploits became a source of public fascination and frustration, as commuters remained on edge and the NYPD grappled with bringing the cunning criminal to justice. To this day, the identity and fate of the subway bandit remain a mystery, adding to the lore of New York City's infamous outlaws. Victor Garina, a trusted security guard named Victor Garina at a Wells Fargo depot in West Hartford, Connecticut, executed one of the largest cash heists in U.S. history. The story takes us back to the year 1983, when Garina leveraged on his insider access to subdue two fellow employees, tied them up, and meticulously loaded $700 million into a rented car. The heist, which took place without a single shot, shocked law enforcement and the public alike due to its audacity and precision. Following the heist, Garina managed to evade capture by fleeing to Cuba, where he reportedly sought asylum. The FBI then launched an extensive investigation and placed him on their 10 most wanted fugitives list. But despite exhaustive efforts, Garina remained difficult to find. Over the years, numerous tips and leads surfaced, but none led to his apprehension. His disappearance has become the stuff of legend, symbolizing both a high-stakes crime and the limitations of law enforcement in tracking down fugitives with international connections. El Chapo. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the notorious leader of the Sinaloa cartel, has masterminded two of the most daring prison escapes in recent history. First, it was in 2001. While incarcerated in a maximum security prison in Mexico, Guzman orchestrated his escape by hiding in a laundry cart. This brazen move marked the beginning of over a decade on the run, during which he continued to oversee his drug empire and elude capture despite extensive manhunts. And in 2014, Guzman was recaptured, but just like the previous times, his incarceration was short-lived. Because on July 11, 2015, he executed a meticulously planned escape from the Altiplano prison. This was his second time slipping away from the fingertips of the officials. This time, he utilized a mile-long tunnel equipped with ventilation, lighting, and a motorcycle mounted on tracks to facilitate a swift getaway. The tunnel led from his cell to a construction site outside the prison, showcasing an extraordinary level of sophistication and planning. Despite the international manhunt that followed, Guzman managed to stay in hiding for 6 months, leveraging his extensive network and resources. His freedom eventually ended in January 2016, when he was recaptured by Mexican authorities and later extradited to the United States. Glenn Stewart Godwin. In 1987, Glenn Stewart Godwin, a convicted murderer, executed a daring escape from California's Folsom State Prison. Known for his resourcefulness, Godwin managed to cut through a series of fences and razor wire, using an elaborate system of homemade tools and ropes to reach the outer perimeter. His escape stunned authorities and highlighted significant security flaws within the prison system. 4 years later, in 1991, Godwin's criminal saga took an even more dramatic turn. After being recaptured and incarcerated in a Mexican prison for drug trafficking, he managed to escape once again. This second breakout involved the murder of a fellow inmate, after which Godwin vanished into the underworld of Mexico, successfully evading both Mexican and U.S. law enforcement. Godwin's ability to elude capture for decades has made him one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives. His escapes are marked by meticulous planning and a profound understanding of prison operations, making him a particularly difficult target for authorities. Despite numerous sightings and an international manhunt, Godwin remains at large, a ghost in the criminal underworld, whose whereabouts continue to baffle law enforcement agencies worldwide. The Central Park Jogger. The Central Park Jogger case of 1989 remains one of the most controversial and significant miscarriages of justice in American history. On the night of April 19, 1989, Tricia Mailey, a 28-year-old investment banker, was brutally assaulted while jogging in Central Park. The heinous crime led to the arrest and conviction of 5 teenagers: Antron McCrae, Kevin Richardson, Yusuf Salam, Raymond Santana, and Corey Wise. Known as the Central Park Five, the teenagers were subjected to intense interrogation and coerced into giving false confessions, despite the lack of physical evidence linking them to the crime. For over a decade, the Central Park Five maintained their innocence while serving lengthy prison sentences. The real perpetrator, Matias Reyes, a convicted sex offender and murderer, managed to evade capture for the Central Park attack until he voluntarily confessed in 2002. Reyes provided a detailed account of the assault that matched the evidence and led to the discovery of DNA evidence that conclusively linked him to the crime. It was his confession and the subsequent DNA match that eventually exonerated the Central Park Five, leading to their convictions being vacated and their eventual release. The case highlighted significant flaws in the criminal justice system, including the issues of racial bias, wrongful convictions, and police coercion. It also spurred widespread calls for criminal justice reform and remains a poignant reminder of the importance of safeguarding the rights of the accused. Olympic Park Bomber. Eric Rudolph, infamously known as the Olympic Park Bomber, escaped law enforcement for 5 years after committing a series of bombings that killed 2 people and injured over 100 others. His most notorious attack was during the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. But he also targeted abortion clinics and a lesbian bar with deadly streaks of violence. Despite an extensive manhunt costing $24 million, Rudolph managed to remain undetected by relying on his survivalist skills and intimate knowledge of the Appalachian wilderness. Rudolph's ability to evade capture was partly due to his adeptness at living off the land. He constructed hidden campsites and foraged for food, often rummaging through dumpsters and stealing from local businesses. He even buried caches of supplies to sustain himself during his time on the run. Authorities believe he avoided using any electronic devices or modern conveniences that could have given away his location. However, a major turning point finally came on May 2003, when rookie police officer Jeff Postel spotted Rudolph behind a grocery store in Murphy, North Carolina. Rudolph, looking much thinner but in surprisingly good shape, initially tried to pass off as a homeless man. However, upon further questioning, he admitted to his true identity. His arrest was the culmination of persistent efforts by the FBI and local law enforcement, who had never given up on the belief that he was still hiding in the area. Upon prosecution, he would later plead guilty to the bombings and provide information on additional explosives he had hidden. He was spared the death penalty, but was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars at the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado. The Sayfullo Saipov case. On October 31, 2017, a horrifying vehicular attack occurred on a bike path in Lower Manhattan, New York City. The suspect, Sayfullo Saipov, drove a rented truck down the path, killing 8 people and injuring several others. Immediately after the attack, Saipov exited the vehicle brandishing fake firearms, attempting to flee the scene. The ensuing chaos and confusion initially allowed Saipov a brief moment of difficulty in capture, but his escape was short-lived. NYPD officers quickly responded, and Saipov was shot and apprehended by Officer Ryan Nash near the scene. Saipov, an immigrant from Uzbekistan, was found to have been inspired by extremist ideologies and had planned the attack for weeks. His capture provided crucial insights into his motives and planning, leading to heightened security measures and an extensive investigation into potential accomplices and similar threats. The attack shocked the city and the nation, leading to an outpouring of support for the victims and a renewed focus on counter-terrorism efforts. Saipov was later charged with federal terrorism offenses and faced trial, highlighting the ever-present need for vigilance and swift action by law enforcement in the face of such unpredictable and devastating acts of violence. The Mountain Man, Claude Dallas, a self-styled mountain man and trapper, became infamous in 1981 after killing 2 game wardens, Bill Pogue and Conley Elms in Idaho. The confrontation arose when the wardens attempted to arrest Dallas for illegal trapping. But instead of complying, Dallas shot both wardens, executing them in cold blood to ensure there were no witnesses. Following the murders, Dallas disappeared into the vast wilderness of the American West, using his survival skills to escape capture. Living off the land, he managed to stay ahead of an intense manhunt that spanned multiple states and involved numerous law enforcement agencies. His ability to blend into the rugged terrain and his familiarity with remote areas made him an elusive target. For over a year, he managed to stay out of the radar, becoming a legend of sorts, with stories of his escapades capturing the public's imagination. His eventual capture in April 1982 came as a result of a tip-off, leading to a dramatic arrest that ended his time on the run. In 1983, Dallas was convicted of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 30 years in prison. His case drew significant media attention and raised questions about law enforcement practices and the rugged, often lawless life of mountain men in modern America. Jamaican drug lord. In 2010, Christopher Dudas Coke, a notorious Jamaican drug lord, became the target of one of the largest and most violent manhunts in Jamaica's history. Coke, the leader of the infamous Shower Posse, was wanted for extradition to the United States on charges of drug trafficking and racketeering. His stronghold was the Tivoli Gardens neighborhood in Kingston, which he fortified with loyalists and heavy weaponry. The Jamaican government, under intense international pressure, launched a massive operation involving police and military forces to capture Coke. This massive operation led to fierce gun battles that resulted in the deaths of over 70 people, including civilians, and widespread destruction in Tivoli Gardens. Despite the scale of the operation, Coke managed to evade capture initially, slipping through the grasp of the security forces. A month-long manhunt ensued, during which Coke's whereabouts remained a mystery. His ability to remain hidden in the densely populated urban area underscored his deep connections and the support he had within his community. Finally, on June 22, 2010, Coke was finally caught at a road checkpoint, disguised in a wig and glasses, trying to evade detection. His capture marked the end of a violent and tumultuous period in Kingston and led to his extradition to the United States, where he later pleaded guilty to the charges against him. The ATM robbery. A suspect known for a series of bold ATM robberies in Queens, New York in the year 2016, utilized his deep knowledge of the local area to consistently escape capture. This criminal targeted various ATMs across the borough, often striking in the early hours of the morning when the streets were quiet and fewer witnesses were around. Despite clear surveillance footage capturing his image during multiple heists, the robber skillfully managed to disappear each time, leaving the NYPD baffled. The suspect's ability to navigate Queens' intricate network of streets and neighborhoods suggested a familiarity that allowed him to plan escape routes effectively. His methods included disabling security cameras and using disguises to avoid recognition, further complicating efforts to track him down. Law enforcement officials increased patrols and set up undercover operations, but the robber always seemed one step ahead. Public appeals for information yielded little, as the suspect's identity remained shrouded in mystery. The case highlighted the challenges police face when dealing with a cunning and adaptable criminal who can blend into the urban environment seamlessly. As the robber is yet to be captured, the Queens ATM robber's exploits has become a subject of local news, drawing attention to the need for improved security measures at ATMs and the persistent challenge of urban crime. Williamsburg rooftop robber. In 2011, the hip neighborhood of Williamsburg, Brooklyn became the stage for a series of daring heists orchestrated by a mysterious figure known as the Williamsburg rooftop robber. This criminal gained notoriety for his audacious escapes using the borough's rooftops as his getaway route. Time and again, he managed to outmaneuver the NYPD, employing his knowledge of the urban landscape to evade capture after each successful robbery. The Williamsburg rooftop robber targeted businesses and residences in the area, and his method was quite audacious. After swiftly gaining access to his target, he would disappear onto the rooftops, where he utilized hidden pathways and fire escapes to navigate the neighborhood's labyrinthine structures. His nimble movements and familiarity with the rooftops allowed him to outpace pursuing officers, leaving them frustrated and bewildered. Despite the NYPD's efforts to apprehend him, the Williamsburg rooftop robber remained at large for an extended period, becoming a symbol of urban ingenuity and criminal defiance. However, his luck eventually ran out when law enforcement agencies intensified their surveillance and deployed additional resources. In a dramatic confrontation, the robber was finally apprehended, bringing an end to his reign of rooftop escapades and providing closure to the community he had terrorized. Whitey Bulger. From 1994 to 2011, James Whitey Bulger, the notorious mob boss of the Winter Hill Gang in Boston, managed to evade capture, living a quiet and inconspicuous life under an assumed identity. Bulger, who had risen to infamy as one of the most wanted fugitives in America, had been indicted on multiple charges, including racketeering, extortion, and involvement in numerous murders. During his years on the run, Bulger maintained a low profile, blending into communities and avoiding attention from law enforcement. Despite being the subject of an extensive manhunt and appearing on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, he managed to stay one step ahead, aided by his connections and resources within the criminal underworld. Bulger's ability to escape capture for over a decade and a half was a testament to his cunning and adaptability, as well as the challenges faced by law enforcement in tracking down elusive fugitives. His capture in 2011, however, brought an end to his life as a fugitive and marked the culmination of years of relentless pursuit by law enforcement agencies. Harlem shooter. A shooter in Harlem orchestrated a dramatic evasion of police capture, showcasing the complexities of urban manhunts. After committing the crime, the shooter expertly blended into the bustling streets of Harlem, leveraging the dense population and chaotic environment to his advantage. The urban landscape, with its myriad alleyways, crowded sidewalks, and towering buildings, provided ample opportunities for the assailant to disappear into the throng of pedestrians, making it exceedingly difficult for law enforcement to maintain visuals on the suspect. The NYPD launched an extensive search, deploying numerous officers and using various tactics to track down the elusive shooter. The pursuit stretched over several days, involving meticulous ground searches, interrogations of witnesses, and the use of surveillance footage to piece together the suspect's movements. The shooter's ability to remain hidden for an extended period highlighted the challenges police face in densely populated urban settings, where the line between hunter and prey can blur easily. Despite the initial escape, the persistent efforts of the NYPD eventually paid off. After a significant chase that kept the community on edge, the shooter was finally apprehended. His capture brought a sense of relief to Harlem and underscored the tenacity and resourcefulness of law enforcement in navigating the intricacies of urban manhunts. Mikhail Khodorkovsky. In 2003, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, one of Russia's richest men and a prominent oligarch, became embroiled in a dramatic confrontation with the Russian government. As the head of Yukos, one of Russia's largest oil companies, Khodorkovsky had amassed significant wealth and influence. However, his growing political ambitions and support for opposition parties drew the intense anger of the Kremlin. Initially, Khodorkovsky managed to avoid capture through a combination of political connections, financial maneuvering, and leveraging his extensive network. His strategies included transferring assets abroad, utilizing complex legal frameworks, and maintaining strong ties with influential figures both within and outside Russia. This period of evasion highlighted his resourcefulness and the precarious balance of power between Russian oligarchs and the government. Despite his efforts, Khodorkovsky's luck ran out on October 25, 2003, when he was arrested at gunpoint on his private jet at a Siberian airport. Charged with fraud and tax evasion, his arrest was widely perceived as politically motivated, supposedly aimed at quashing his influence and sending a message to other potential challengers to President Vladimir Putin's authority. Khodorkovsky's subsequent trial and imprisonment became a focal point for discussions on political repression and the rule of law in Russia. After spending over a decade in prison, he was pardoned and released in 2013. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.